Mr. Speaker, when Labour negotiates, our country loses.
Well, imagine the shock for opposition leader Kemi Badenoch when someone tells her the last Tory government managed to negotiate the first deal in history, which involved walling the country off from a trading bloc made up of its nearest neighbours, making it harder both to buy their stuff and sell yours. A deal which by almost every economic and financial measure has been disastrous for the UK. In fact, the OBR, that's the Office for Budget Responsibility, says it will reduce the UK's potential GDP by 4% in the long run by lowering the trade intensity of the economy. And if that's not enough, their most recent report lays bare the devastating impact of the deal they negotiated. Weak growth in imports and exports over the medium term partly reflect the continuing impact of Brexit, which we expect to reduce the overall trade intensity of the UK economy by 15% in the long term. It's an absolutely staggering reduction in the potential economic performance of the country at a time when every penny counts. And the opposition leader will fall off her chair when she's reminded that just weeks ago she admitted this.
I will acknowledge the Conservative Party made mistakes, and I understand why the British people made it so clear in July that they wanted a change. We were making announcements without proper plans. We announced that we would leave the European Union before we had a plan for growth outside the EU.
Conservative Party leader Kemi Badenoch actually admitting the previous Conservative government made mistakes on Brexit, and more specifically, leaving the European Union without a plan for growth outside it. How is that not at best grossly irresponsible and at worst grossly negligent on the part of the previous government? Here is former Home Secretary, Vote Leave advocate and now Shadow Foreign Secretary, Priti Patel, agreeing with the opposition leader's statement.
So in terms of long-term sustainable proposals, Kemi is right to recognise that clearly, wider plans needed to be put in place.
So with all that in mind, just listen to this again.
Mr. Speaker, when Labour negotiates, our country loses.
And as for the Conservative Party leader's ability to negotiate deals on behalf of the country, who could forget this?
The CPTPP deal, which I negotiated, it's going to be amazing.
So amazing, in fact, that Rishi Sunak's government, that she was part of, predicted the post-Brexit trade deal would grow the economy by a tiny 0.08%. If that wasn't bad enough, it later emerged that even that may be an overestimate according to the then government's own documents. And that was after 15 years of membership. Now contrast that tiny predicted benefit with the OBR having just reconfirmed a 4% reduction in the UK's potential GDP is still their assumption regarding the long-run impact of Brexit. And who can forget that trade deal they negotiated with Australia?
The first step is to recognise that the Australia trade deal is not actually a very good deal for the UK. The truth of the matter is that the UK gave away far too much for far too little in return.
And remember that deal with New Zealand?
British farmers have reacted with shock to the terms of a new free trade deal with New Zealand.
The deal will see Kiwi meat imported without tariffs, and farmers in the UK say they get nothing in return.
A world away from rejoicing Kiwi farmers, their welly-wearing counterparts feel as though they are the sacrificial lambs of the free trade deal.
We're not competing on a level playing field. It's us surrendering to you, New Zealanders, and giving you a great deal, and we're getting nothing out of it.
The impact on Britain's economy is expected to be negligible.
So next time you hear Conservatives say this,
when Labour negotiates, our country loses.
Please remember they're talking complete bollocks.